Jeff, so I talked to Billy Donovan. He loves bringing this story up, right? So you were a GA for Coach Pitino, Providence College. What a staff. You had Gordy Chiesa, Stu Jackson, yourself, um,
Herb Sendek.
Herb. That's right. How can I forget Herb? I mean, it was just a great group of guys that had left there and went on to do great things. And Coach Pitino was clearly in his prime. So I visited Providence. I'll never forget this. I visited with Sean Muto and Treg Lee. And I would say Treg Lee would have been the highest rated guy of the three of us. But, September official visit. And I was really excited because Coach Pitino was, to me, ahead of his time, like player development and, having the 40-minute skill sessions, et cetera. And I was like, this may be a good spot for me, right? And Billy Donovan was graduating, but they had a young guard, Carlton Screen, right? So we get in on a Friday, and number one, you're ready to go. Hey, where are we going to eat in Providence? All this great food, restaurants, and Coach Pitino said, we're going to eat in the cafeteria. So we ate in the cafeteria because he at that point was, I want these guys to truly see Providence for what it is, right? So I watched the first practice, and about 2.5 hours through the first practice. And it was pressing I'm talking about the second practice started to the end, and Coach Pitino was all over Carlton Screen. It was this guard. And I remember thinking, like, this is the hardest practice that I've ever seen. Like, I don't know physically if I'd be able to do this, and I had this reputation as a guy who loved the game, right? So we're walking, boom, boom. And then I think that was like whenever an afternoon later that night, I said, where are we going? Treg Lee said, Coach, where are we going? I said, well, we're going to practice. And they go, well, we already watched the practice. No, this is a second practice, right? We did a second practice, right? I'm gonna kind of kill it here. Long story short, but I think we watched 4 practices over that weekend. And I'm telling you, Treg Lee looked at me at one point and said, man, I don't know about you, but this is one place I'm not coming.
Well,
and it was, and I'm telling you, for me, and I love the game, but I still think about this. I'm 53. That was a long time ago. I still remember Billy Donovan was my host. He had to take me out. And I remember almost apologizing to him, like, you don't have to take me out. There's no way you can even feel your legs right now, let alone take me out. But that's how it was back then. And I would just bring that up, thinking back to you as a GA, how you would have thought about things then.
well, it was, if there was a 20-hour a week rule then, we would have been up by Tuesday. Like it would have been over by Tuesday. We wouldn't have been able to practice the rest of the week. So, like I remember the daily schedule. It was during the week, you had your individual workout, then you had team practice, then dinner, then study hall, then free throws. And, you got done with free throws at I think it was like 10:30, 11. And at that point, I'd been out of college for a year. I coached high school, and we had injuries in the, after you left, Carlton Screen went down. So we had no other point guard. So I now had to practice.
Oh my God.
No. And listen, I wasn't in great shape at that time, nor was I a good player, and they were trapping. And I almost got in a fist fight with Herb Sendek because after a scrimmage, when I was going on about an hour of sleep, he had perfect penmanship. So Coach Pitino had him put all the stats up on the board, and Herb would like Coach Pitino had, if you had it was a good number, Herb circled it with let's say blue, but a bad number was red. And he's putting my stats up there, and he's circling the shit with, he's circling it with red. And I walk in and I'm like, what are you doing? Was going on no sleep. I was ready to throw down. And my man was just like, no, these turnovers are too high. I'm like, no crap. That's why I love Billy the Kid, because Billy the Kid, he took it easy on me. He went hard enough, he didn't get yelled at, but when I was having to play him, he just moved the ball along. Thank God.
I've never seen a group of guys, though, on a serious note, ever work harder than that Providence team and teams when Coach Pitino was there. And they got to the Final Four on sheer conditioning and will and just, and my respect for Billy as a player, as I watched him become who he became. It was just amazing, man, because I remember thinking, and I'll never forget on that visit, man, I thought I loved the game. I thought I could really, I'm not so sure I could do this. I mean, it literally frightened me.
Well, you remember back then, that was the first year of the 3-point shot. And
Right.
Coach Pitino, having come from the NBA, had experience with that. Plus, we were the only team at that time in 87, 86, 87, running pick and roll. And we weren't running like sophisticated. We were running like straight high pick and roll. Yeah. And I will take to my grave, there's never been in the last 40 years of college basketball a more valuable player in any one season than Billy Donovan was in that season. And there is no one in college basketball who's ever coached better in one season than Coach Pitino did in that season. I mean, you talk about bringing in Coach Pitino's second year there, like we didn't have a lot, but we shot the three. We had a great player in Billy. We were playing differently. And like you said, Sean, I mean, what they went through, it steeled them for competition because
Jeff, let me ask you this, because it's a good topic, because Coach Pitino obviously is at Iona. He knocks off Alabama last week. He's like 6-2, maybe 7-2 right now. He revolutionized really bringing the 3-point shot to the forefront in college. A lot of credit there. He's probably the godfather of individual instruction in a college setting. That's the second thing. I don't necessarily know if you can credit him to the full court press, but he clearly, the full court pressing style, up tempo, shooting threes, you had that. But maybe his greatest gift as a coach, and listening to all the guys like Herb who've worked for him and some players that obviously they revere him when they're done, is the unimaginable confidence that he gives the team in the individual players by how hard they work every day. It's almost like it's not, he has to have an individual meeting to talk to you about your confidence. You earn your confidence with him. And it's almost like every stop he's been, Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, and now even Iona. They were in the tournament last year. They just knocked off Alabama last week. What would you say is Coach Pitino's greatest gift? Because sometimes he's taking all kinds of different teams. It's not like
Jeff and Stan, this is for both of you too, because Arch and I talked about this. Your background with Pat Riley as well, and the conditioning element. And Jeff, I'm 1 year. I missed Mark Jackson by a year, thank God. So when I came into Pitt, he was on his way to the NBA. But in some ways, what Billy Donovan did at Providence, Mark Jackson did with the Knicks with Coach Pitino. It's like the physical conditioning element as well seemed to bring out the best in those guys, like in a way that you don't oftentimes see. And I would just ask both of you, like the Pat Riley Pitino comparison with conditioning as well.
Yeah. So for Coach Pitino, what I found is obviously the conditioning was there because we played. His practices were not drill oriented. Like you weren't doing shell defense. Like you mentioned, Sean, you came in and you were playing up and down basically the entire time. So I think it developed I think it did a number of things besides conditioning. I think as a coach, you learned who you wanted to play. Guys, I think, found their rhythm and game earlier in the season because they had played so much. And I think what Coach Pitino did so well is people talk about how hard he is on guys, and he does. He pushes and prods everybody, coaches, players. But he did something the first year, the only year I was with him in that Final Four year, where the ball swung and a guy missed somebody, and it was Delray Brooks, and Delray Brooks was coming off where he was a highly recruited athlete at Indiana. Didn't work out. He transfers to Providence. And he was sort of, he wasn't a super confident guy at that time. And I remember him yelling, and I forgot at who, but he said, so he was getting on that guy about not making the extra pass, but he was always saying, you missed one of the great shooters in America. You mean to tell me that you're going to hold the ball and miss one of the great shooters in America? And he kept saying about Delray Brooks, without saying it to Delray Brooks, that this guy was one of the great shooters in America. And I thought he had a unique way about talking to a team and getting guys to understand where their greatness lies and getting them to appreciate each other's greatness in whatever facet of the game it may be.
Yeah.